participate into activities as opposed to sitting home the whole day and feeling homesick. So that's one thing that has been done. We started off when we started the association. It was not incorporated association. So we've managed to incorporate the association. That was done 4 years ago. It was incorporated, and since then we've become a legal entity as well. So that's a huge thing for our community as well. Our community has also fostered the establishment of a national body. So we've led on establishing a national body for all Sierra Leonean communities in Australia. It's called the Federation of Sierra Leonean Communities in Queensland, in Australia. Yeah. So we've fostered the establishment of that. We worked with state Sierra Leone community groups to form that body that is currently existing. I'm the interim chairman, by the way. So that's a huge milestone of achievement for our community, I suppose. We've also worked in collaboration with the Liberian Association of Queensland under the umbrella of Queensland African Communities Council to raise funds for Ebola virus victims. So that was one of the biggest things we've done, much thanks and appreciation obviously to Liberian Association and obviously for QACC for spearheading that, for us to work together and respond to over nearly 8,000 people that lost their lives to Ebola over 1.5 year period in West Africa. So we were able to raise enough, some money we raised, so about $5,000 we were able to raise, and that amount was divided halfway into Liberian projects, and they went on sending used items to affected, to kids, orphans that have been affected by the virus. We used we round up our money, the money that we collected, we got from the fundraising. We rounded up to 10,000 using funds from our community coffers, and then sent that money back home and bought food items, because there are a lot of people that were suffering at the time. The people that displaced because of that, their kids that had no families anymore, their fathers that had no wives, So those people were actually living in a stadium at the time because they had nowhere else to live. So we organized the distribution of large amount of food, about 300 bags of rice, salt, pepper, sugar, and you name it, and books for kids as well. So that a member of our community actually went back to Sierra Leone and spearheaded the distribution of those food items there. He was there for 6 weeks. And that was a huge success, and it was captured on national news and newspapers and so on. So, in a nutshell, I think those are things that they are huge achievement for the community that we're very, very proud and proud of here.
Just a few minutes for Tanzania.
Yeah. First, Tanzania was the Tanzanian Association in Queensland was established in 2012, and it got incorporated in same year, August 2012. But prior to that, Tanzania was involved in another association which was for Eastern Central Africa, which I think that association didn't exist, and this enforced Tanzania to come up with its own association. There's being so young, there's not many achievement which we can say per se, but the most which we are proud of is just fostering relationships between Tanzania and its member and the Tanzania Association and other community members. Swahili being the main language spoken in Tanzania, and which is spoken in Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, Uganda. It brings us together with all these communities which can speak Swahili, and whenever we have functions or events, we normally invite all these other communities, and being able to share the same language brings us together and fosters the good relationship between these communities. Another achievement I can say is trying to teach those Tanzanians born in Australia to understand Swahili or speak Swahili. So there's a program at the moment which Tanzania Association is conducting, and teaching Swahili to.
I'll come to you. I'll come to you. But are there support in place for people who migrate into the country? Like, I'm a Ghanaian. I come to Australia, and if I contact Ghana Association of Queensland, would they be able to support me to settle into the country?
Yeah. I mean, if it's for the Ghanaian Association that you are referring to.
No, I mean everybody. I'll give everybody the chance to talk.
Yes. But I think we have to remember that sometimes they're not even aware that an association exists.
Yeah.
So within the association, we have a community member who tracks new students arriving.
How do they do that?
Through the university system.
Okay.
So you contact the offices, and they give you a list of those coming, and we make sure that we make them aware, make contact with them, and give them a sense of a welcome, and try and understand the things that they would like to be involved with. And we don't necessarily hand out cash. Because it's a complex area that we don't necessarily want to be involved in, but it's the moral support and putting them in touch with services and how they can get things done. Even within the universities, do orientations and so on. We have a coordinating member that can do that. So if people are coming to study, that is one way. But if they are migrants or on different visas or situations, they get to know very quickly our existence and how we can help them. So there are channels of doing that. But there are challenges with trying to do things which are beyond a community which is voluntary. You know, we are here doing different things, but we find time to run an association and keep everybody together. But there are systems in place to help people settle in the country, and we make them aware of those services and channel them to those areas where they can take advantage of making life and settlement easier for them.
Is it the same in Nigeria?
Yes, currently we have what we call community business cards that we have developed with some essential information for new arrivals, students, or even people not studying. And such people can find that in, say, the African shops, like the one we have in Muruka or Atenala, or other African shops, and student centers and things like that. So we're trying to make it distribute that and make it accessible to as much as possible. But again, and I'm sure that applies to many of the groups here, we are mostly funded internally.
Yeah.
There is a limit to what you can do. Using myself as an example, when we arrived, we knew no one. We were in a regional area, and to know where to buy things that are African dishes, for example, or items for cooking, and to know where to go do things, the shortcuts to different services, fellow Nigerians told me how to do that. The thing is, you have to find them sometimes too. It's not just what are they doing for me, it's also making that attempt to find out your people around you and also contributes when you can. But in terms of new arrivals, definitely we have ways of reaching them. There are families who on a private level help these people, and then we have general meetings these days that are a part of that meeting is to focus on new arrivals, have people encourage and motivate them. So these are the things that we do in the Nigerian community.
Just so everybody will know, because someone came to me and then he told me that when he was, where he came back from, someone told him that when you come to Australia, there's an association that will help you pay your school fees for you to settle, into the country. So I just wanted to know, is there any support in place for individuals when they migrate to Australia?
There is abundant support, obviously with limitation, to new migrants from Sierra Leone, for example. We've, as a community association, we established firm relationship contacts with community organizations. So community organizations like QPAST, MDA, Access Services, that most Queensland local governments and state governments as well. So we've registered with all these organizations, and most of these organizations got a database for community groups. So when a new member arrives, it's easier for them to present our flyers or card or website address and our Facebook page. Okay, you've got the Sierra Leone Descendants Association is here. It's up to you if you want to establish contact, but they've been here, this is their brochure, and then they can make it available to that individual. Now, it is up to the individual to establish contact or not to establish contact. But once they establish contact, for example, we've got different auxiliary groups within our community. We've got the women's group, we've got the men's, we've got the youth, we've got the elders, and so on. We've got the cultural group, and so on. So when that person establishes contact with us, some of them, they just want to be able to socialize, be part of the community. Others may want to play soccer, for example. We link them up with the youth group where they can play soccer. Others, they just family, they want to be able to connect with other women, so we link them with the women's group. Some are aged, they just want to be able to sit down with other old people and share the wisdom, yeah? So we link them up with the elders group. So we worked with them based on what their needs are. We link them with appropriate groups. And if they need assistance in certain areas that we cannot cover, we will then link them up with services that will be able to assist them. For example, somebody probably need assistance, like if somebody arrives as a refugee and they need assistance, the refugee packages to be provided to them, some sort of humanitarian assistance we provide them, we can refer them to Access Services or MDA, or and say these are the places you can seek assistance. We may have contact details of staff that work in there, provide those contact details to them. So it's not mainly about actually providing the bulk of the services, but it's also about providing referral where the members can actually access some relevant services.
Nkosana, how much effort do you put into organizing events and functions?
A lot. If you look at Ciala, the core way we bring together young Africans is through our events. So from the very, very beginning, we started in September 2015, and we were very detailed and focused on how we were going to create our events, because we look at an event as you're creating an experience that people remember. That after they've gone to your event, they remember, what was that? Oh, that was a Ciala event. I remember I talked to these people, I had such a great time. So for us, we have a manual for our events, very, very structured in terms of step 1, step 2, everything, because we're in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. So all our teams have this manual, and after all of our events, we have a national meeting every month, and we get the feedback from everyone, and we update that manual. So it's continually being updated, and we're very process driven in terms of how we run our events. It's a very crucial part of what we do.
How do we get funded? Where do we get our funds from to organize events and functions? Nigeria?
I think I just mentioned that mainly funded internally. We have donations from members, we have people just pitching in, helping as much as they can. And we have also benefited from the Queensland government. We receive bits of funding, which previously we normally use for the independence celebration, which is one of our major events. But of course, we would like a situation where we get more so we can execute most of the things we would like, but we do know that it's not an easy thing to do. We aspire to get, reach out and get as much more funding as we can. But for now, it's mostly us running our things, and people have been very helpful.
Yeah.
Well, that's very similar. We internally funded, I would say, because member contributions and also at events. So we organize events and then we raise funds from those events. So we have entry fees and so on. So it's a lot easier to raise funds that way. We occasionally apply for grants, and some we're successful, most we are not successful. But the bulk of the funds come actually from events that we organize and charging members to fees for entry. Yeah.
Aya talk about your association supporting Ebola back home.
Yeah.
Ghana, is there anything you are doing to support your people back home in Ghana?
Yes, I mean, how do we get funded? I just want to address that.
Okay.
It's through subscriptions, like the other members, Nigeria and Sierra Leone have mentioned. But it's a challenge every time, because people have to understand what they get from putting money into the association. There are people who want to do more, but without the necessary funds, you can't do a lot. So we all have to understand the meaning of funds to the survival of an association, to provide the welfare and organize activities. So donations are part of that. People who feel they've benefited in diverse ways, so they put back, and our doors are open to all that. When you have an incorporated association, it makes it easier for you to apply for some grants from local governments or state governments. But I think the condition of being successful is being incorporated, and that's why I believe everybody's trying to work towards that, because they want to make sure that the money that's given out, you're accountable to that. So your financials are audited every year and presented to the funding bodies that give you the money. Right, now what are we doing to
back home?
Back home. It's a very, very difficult thing to do, because we are here contributing to this community. That's our first priority. We all have families back home, and I think what Chichi mentioned earlier on, the diversity of where we come from and the groups we belong to makes it difficult for us to try and do something that we don't want to be too parochial about doing that. But I think when you hear of misfortunes, we do gather the little we can and channel it through NGOs to release those services to the people who are affected. And I said, every time there's a disaster of any kind that affects the diaspora, we try and get something going. But it's not structured in a way that you can say for sure that these are things that we've done. But when it's brought to our attention, we respond. And I think that is a very good thing to do. But we don't want to be seen to be overplaying that, because our focus is what we can do for the individual members and their groups here in Australia.
Tanzania.
Yeah.
Is there anything you are doing back home specific? What are you doing specific for your people in Tanzania? Your association?
First of all, the Tanzanian Association in Queensland, same with other states, is very small. The reason being, likely Tanzania has always been a peaceful country, and people who are in Australia mostly just came here for their personal reasons, or like family, joining family, students who decide to stay here because of the skills they have. So this limits us in the sense of membership. For example, in Queensland, our main source of funds is the membership fees, which we pay every year, plus donations which members of the association decide to give to the association. Beside that, we've tried to organize events as well to raise funds. And also during catastrophes, like whenever it happens, it doesn't matter. It's not only for Tanzania, but like Ebola, we did came up together as well and contributed money, which we channeled to the country affected, or to the associations of the country which was affected. And yeah, so there's nothing much we have done to assist Tanzania from here, beside the normal, like it's a link between the government, our embassies in Japan. So Tanzanian government and all the Tanzanians living in Queensland, we rely, or in Australia in general, we rely on our embassy in Japan. But whenever there's a need to, the association will act on behalf of the Tanzanian embassy in Japan, who are here in Queensland. And we have done that on Chogam, when Chogam was in Queensland, and even when he was in Perth, somehow we managed to participate on that as well. Also, the new arrival we get is students, and mostly the big number used to come through the Australian aid, Oz aid, the scholarships.
Oz aid,
and a little bit of people who come here individually, but a lot of students who are keen, they do their homework before they come to Queensland or to other states, and they know there's an association, or they already know some individuals who've been living here. So what we act is welcome, make them feel at home, and also individual member can participate in helping them with beds, mattresses, or pots, cooking pots, and just to make them settle in a bit.
QACC, how do you select your executive? Do you make sure that all African members have, a say in decision making? How do you select your executive?
Actually, that's a very good question. When you look at an umbrella association, if you want to create impact in an institution as diverse as QACC is, then you need to reflect that diversity. That diversity in terms of the decisions you make, that diversity in terms of projects, but that diversity in terms of leadership. For instance, in
are we all members of QACC?
Yeah.
Yes.
Association is, yeah.
So actually that gives you the answer before I go into other details. You can see the diversity we already have here in QACC. But going back directly into the leadership issue, to make sure that the policies we make reflect actually those real issues on the ground. For instance, as a president from Rwanda, my vice president is from Sierra Leone, my secretary is from Zimbabwe, my community engagement officer is from Burundi.
A bowl of fruit salad.
Yeah, so you can see how diverse we are in terms of the leadership of QACC, and that translates to the decisions that we make.
But there's no conscious effort to achieve that diversity in the leadership. It just happens.
I think we saying that there's no conscious effort would be ignoring the fact that we also try as much as possible to consider or factor that into the leadership. There is a conscious way that we do approach the diversity, ensuring that the diversity is reflected in the leadership. We try as much as possible to make sure that the leadership is very diverse, so that we get to understand and we get to provide appropriate interventions in different communities.
Uncle Danny, do you have anything to say about?
No. I think it's laudable that they are able to achieve that on behalf of the different groups that come under that umbrella. Because it's a very difficult area, and that representation.
To be honest, I heard of QACC about 2 years ago. I've been here for the past 12 years. Mm-hmm. So.
But I don't think QACC is not a very older association grouping. It was formed under 10 years ago.
Yeah, it was formed under 10 years ago.
Exactly.
It's actually its achievements actually very dramatic and very significant when you look at the age of QACC, the dynamics, the structure of QACC, managing 58,000 African Australians across Queensland, and member associations capturing extending to capture the 54 countries, as well as interest groups within those African countries represented across Queensland, I think the achievement has been very tremendous.
Is there any advice to the general public from anybody? Because that brings us to the end of the discussion.
I would quickly say, if you have not engaged with your community association, and I say maybe your specific country, or even with QACC, please try and do that. Given that most of these community associations are run, by volunteers, but they make that decision to commit their time, their skills to try and get us together. It's not really possible sometimes to reach out and get everybody. For example, the new arrivals, we in the Nigerian Community Association would love to engage as many people as soon as they step foot in Queensland, but we may not have the resources or the ability to do that efficiently all the time. So it's also helpful to have people who really want to be part of the association to reach out, find your kith and kin around you, and we find that, or in my personal experience, most of the people, the arrivals or migrants who actually reach out to come and find the association and want to join the association are the ones that contribute the most. They are the ones who really want to be part of it.
Nkusana,
I would just
any
say,
advice to the young people out there?
Yeah, I would say if you're a young African living anywhere, if you're globally, because we're a global organization.
Yeah.
So if you're between 18 to 28 and you're passionate about African development, we want to hear from you. We're an independently run company, public company limited by guarantee. So we're for young Africans, by young Africans, and we're trying to drive.
What is this age mark?
The age mark.
Does that mean when you're 29 above you are old? Is that what it is?
Yeah, well,
Oh, really?
I'm very old.
not so much, not so much.
You are that,
It's just sort of, we're looking at African millennials, young Africans who can relate to where we are right now in our lives. So we have a group called our elders, who are people older than 20.
I feel so old.
Then for us, you're old, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So you're welcome to join the Council of Elders.
Assembly of the
QACC, is there any advice?
I think the advice I would give each and every African Australian in Queensland is it's very important to link to your association in one way or the other. It's very important to engage in activities of QACC, and the reasons for that is that no one can ever deal with the issues today, day-to-day issues of education, of unemployment, of immigration and settlement alone. You need someone to join and be able to have that collective bargaining as well as have that extra support.